Okay, so welcome back. So what we're going to look at now is how to apply a material on here. So I've already set one up, and I'm just going to go give a basic detail of what we're sort of aiming for. So as you can see, as I select the different textures here in our material, I can paint those on, and we're not going to worry about putting the normal maps on there just yet, because I just want to get you to this point, and then we'll look at how we can put on the normal maps to stop it from having this very plastic sort of look at the moment, where it's all really shiny. But just for now, I just want to be able to show you how you can have a different sort of texture on here that you can paint, just to make these look a little bit more realistic and everything. And as soon as we get to that point, then we can tweak it, tweak the resolution a bit, and just to sort of get a different sort of feel for here, and then maybe start getting the normal maps on there so that it doesn't look so shiny and actually sort of has a bit of detail to it as well. Because, you know, at the moment this is tessellating a bit too much for my liking, but also you can't really tell, like, these cobblestones are like sort of sticking out the ground. They all look like they're just painted on, so we want to fix that with the normal map. But to do that, we've got to actually have this so that our material is set up. So I'm actually going to click here on our landscape. I'm going to clear out this material. Yep. So world grid material. So now I am back to the same thing, except for that one sheet there. And we're just going to go through how to create this material. So I'm actually going to just show you the finished product first. So if you haven't seen a node editor before, it can seem a little bit confusing. But basically, this is the material itself, and a material is made up of lots of different textures put together. So in this case, the grass, the rock, and the cobblestone material. It's then going into this thing called a layer blend, specifically a landscape layer blend, which is then plugged into the base color, which is why it's so shiny, because I haven't put anything like the roughness, metallic, specular, or normal map into it just yet. So these are found in the starter content, these textures. So as long as you've got your starter content there, you should be able to follow along and do this. But if not, we'll just load them in afterwards. So again, like I said, I'm just going to delete that and go from scratch on how to create a material in here. So from our content browser here, from our root content, I've created another folder. So I'll go through how to do that as well. Get rid of that shared assets. And right click here, and then we're just gonna go new folder at the top, and we're gonna call this one materials. Go double click in here, right click, and go material. So that then creates this material that we're gonna create. I'm gonna call it terrain_M. So as you can see, by default, just has the same grid on there, nothing special. If I double click on it though, should open up this window here. Now I'm actually going to not minimize it, but click here on this windowed thing just so that it's not taking up the full space. And we're just gonna drag and drop some of the textures in here. So like I said, I'm using the one from the starter content that you would have been prompted at the start to add into your project. So in here, they have a few things already made. They already do have a few materials, but we won't be able to use them because they're not set up to work on landscapes just yet, or at least allow us to do the blending. So what we're instead going to look at is the textures. So these are the 2D images that are put together in a material to make it look all 3D and allow us to paint it onto 3D objects. So I'm going to search for grass, and I can see here I've got this grass texture. I'm going to left click and drag that into my material, drop it there. And normally if I just plug that into base color, that would turn this entire thing here into just grass. So we'll just wait for it to finish loading and you'll see that. So as you can see, that's now given that grass. So if we did that and all we wanted was grass, we'd be fine. To disconnect it, if I hold down the Alt key and click on this little pip here, that'll delete that line and it goes back to being the gray sort of thing. But we also want other textures on there. We don't just want grass, we also want a rock texture. This one will do. And I'm going to put in there a cobblestone one. There's a few to pick from. I'm just going to go from this one, the rough one. So we want to plug these all in, but as you notice, if I try and plug multiple ones in, it normally just replaces that. So what we're going to do is use a blend. Basically, it's going to take all three values, put them in together, and allow us when we're painting on this to go between the two. So I'm going to right click in here, look at all of my different options. I've got blends there, but I know specifically that I'm looking for a landscape blend, layer blend. So I'm going to click on that one. Oops. Yep. And as you can see, there's no options for me to plug in. That's because this works as an array. So on my left-hand side here, I can see I've got 0 array set up. So I'm just going to click plus on here 3 times, so I've got 3 different arrays. So now I can plug those all into there and then plug that one into here. But they don't have any names yet, so I'm just going to click on this little arrow to the side here to expand it. Go here to layer, call this one grass, so that's my first layer. Then go down to this one on 1. Call this one rock, press enter. You can see the names are changing here. And then on my final layer, I'm going to call this one cobble for cobblestone. Then I'll plug the RGB channel into each of these. And now that's all there. Now it'll turn into this weird kind of shiny gray color because it doesn't really know how to preview this because it's still waiting for us to decide how all these layers are going to blend in together. I'm going to click save on that one. So this will take a little bit of time just to sort of save and process it through. But once it's done that and we've compiled our things, it should all work just fine. So now if I click here in my world outliner on landscape, which is the one we've just created here, and I can see here it's landscape material is world grid. So I'm actually going to go back here to content. I'm going to change out any search options I might have. I'm going to go to materials and left click and drag this into that landscape material there. And as you're going to see in just a second, it's all going to turn into this weird sort of dark gray color just while it finishes compiling these ones here. Now, I can't yet paint just by selecting these things here. And the reason for this is, we'll say, this layer has no layer info assigned to it yet. You must create or assign a layer info before you can paint this layer. So a layer info is basically just looking at what's happening with this terrain so that when it paints it, it's kind of got a UV map all ready to go. So I'm just going to click here on this little plus icon. I'm just going to, okay, I'm just going to click out there, go back into here, and click on this little plus icon here. And there's 2 options. You can go with weight blended or non-weight blended. I'm just going to go with weight blended, just for these ones, and it's going to ask to create this layer. I'm just going to go, yep, sure, we'll put it in here just for now. And as soon as I do that now, this grass layer should now take over as the main sort of layer. And I'm going to do that for the other ones here as well. And what that means now is it now has a UV for all of these ones, so I can now paint it on freely without having any distortion from the textures. So if I go here to rock, I left click and drag, it'll freak out for a second and go back to this grid while it's still compiling those. But after it's done its initial freak out, I should be able to paint this rock texture without any issues. So while it's doing that, we'll talk a little bit about the tool strength. So strength is about how clear this all comes through. So as you can see, it sort of fades off to this side here and everything. That's to do with the brush size fall off and the strength of this tool. If this was set to 1, then as soon as I click here, it'll do that. But if I switch this down, I can do a bit of fading effects, which is good because grass tends to sort of fade in through different pieces of rock and everything. So it just works just to be able to sort of slowly fade that in so it's got a more of a natural look. Now again, this is sort of a very basic sort of experiment. You know, these textures aren't exactly optimized to work together well. We've also got these weird grid lines happening that will go away once we rebuild the lighting. But just for now, I just get used to using this tool, creating this material, because if we want to create any more materials in here, all we have to do is go back to our terrain thing, add in another array, and then put those ones in. So we can keep coming back and doing this, but I just want to get the core principle down so that everyone knows how to do that. Again, I'm not expecting you to remember that. That's why we do these recordings, so you can view them again later. But it is a good skill to have just because then you could actually start painting your terrains really easily and just start going through them and actually adding in all that extra detail. And it just helps you to sort of organize where you want things to be and where you want the player to go. For example, having this cobblestone path is a great way of being able to direct the player in exactly the area that you want them to be able to walk and find. So we'll just get you using this and just get you used to doing this. And then we'll start looking at, okay, how do we add a normal? How do we change someone's resolution and start getting things so it looks a little less plasticky and a little bit more natural. But if we can get up to this point, that'll be awesome. Because I think, you know, that's enough complication, especially because we have some people here who have only started using Unreal. So yeah, I think that'll be a good milestone for us to hit, and then we'll come back and then fix that up. So I'll see you in a minute.